All right, getting over into our main topic. Week 17 playoff scenarios. Let me get my... All right, Week 17 playoff scenarios. Who holds their own destiny and who needs some help? All right, here's your AFC locks. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs. They're locked in as the number 1 seed. Nothing can change that. I want to make that very clear. Nothing can change for the Kansas City Chiefs. Even if they lose this week, doesn't matter. They are locked in at the number 1 seed. Doesn't matter. Buffalo or Pittsburgh, they cannot pass them in the standings. Kansas City, I'm going to make this very clear. I'll say that again. They are locked in as the number 1 seed. So they get the first round bye. They're good to go. Most likely going to be resting starters this week would be my guess. Sitting at number 2, we got the Buffalo Bills. Now, currently, we have them sitting with the tie over Pittsburgh, and they're sitting with a 12-3 record, but they could drop to number 3 with a loss this week and Pittsburgh winning. Buffalo plays Miami, and Miami's in a win and in situation, which we'll cover shortly, and Pittsburgh is playing Cleveland. So if Pittsburgh wins and if Buffalo loses, Buffalo could lose the number 2 spot. Now, granted, home field advantage is kind of a different breed right now because there's really no fans in attendance. So really, you're not playing in front of a screaming loud 50,000 to 70,000 fan crowd. So does home field advantage really count or really matter at all, except for the fact that you don't have to travel? And between Pittsburgh and Buffalo, if they had to travel to one another, it's not that far of a difference. So either way, you have Pittsburgh sitting at the current number 3 seed, and they could climb to the number 2 again if they beat Cleveland with a Buffalo loss. So there's the only 3 teams in the AFC that are locked currently. Here's the AFC win and in teams, starting off with Baltimore. And I'm going to say this. None of these 4 teams that are all at 10-5, none of them are guaranteed a spot in the playoffs yet. Not a single one of these 4 teams at 10-5 are guaranteed. They all hold their own destiny in their own hands. Literally, win and you're in. Okay? Starting off with Baltimore. And Baltimore looks to be the most favorable matchup here. Baltimore, sitting at the number 6 seed, plays the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, they're 10-5, and they hold the tiebreaker over Cleveland. So a win here means they lock their spot. If Baltimore doesn't win, they would need Cleveland or Indy to also lose to maintain the current number 6 seed. Now, I'm going to say one thing here before I get too much deeper into this. I'm not factoring games ending in ties in any of this scenarios because I don't believe for a second that anybody this weekend is going to be playing for a tie when it boils down to playoff scenarios. You're going to see teams, when it comes down to it, they're going to be going for it on 4th down. You're going to see they're going to be going for 2 if it comes down to it. Teams that are screwed if they tie are not going to be allowing a tie to happen. Okay? So I'm not factoring any ties into these scenarios. These are wins and losses. Moving on to the second team there. Tennessee Titans, currently number 4. Tennessee needs to win or they need to have Indy lose to Jacksonville. Either one, and they're not only... Either one, and they not only lock in a playoff spot, but they actually win the AFC South. So if they beat Houston, they win the AFC South. If they lose to Houston and Indy loses to Jacksonville, they still win the AFC South. Tennessee holds the tiebreaker because of the head-to-heads over Indy. The number 3 team listed here, Cleveland Browns, currently sitting at number 7. Cleveland just found out that their task this weekend against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the AFC North champion Pittsburgh Steelers, just got a little bit easier. Tomlin announced today that Ben would not play in the game, and several others may not as well. He'll release more information as the week goes. He also alluded to pulling many of the starters after halftime. So you could see a completely depleted Pittsburgh Steelers team the second half against the Browns. If Cleveland doesn't have a bunch of more COVID-related inactives, they could be due for a spot in the dance for the first time since Tim Couch led them to the playoffs at 9-7 back in 2002. Here's a little fun fact for you on Cleveland. Head coach at the time back in 2002 was Butch Davis, who's currently the Florida International head coach, and their OC, none other than Bruce Arians, who was the Pittsburgh Steelers OC in 2007 to 2011 and currently Tom Brady's head coach. If Cleveland loses this game, they need Indy to lose to Jacksonville because Cleveland holds the tiebreaker over Indy. And the last team on the win and in for the AFC is the Miami Dolphins, sitting at the number 5 seed currently. Miami needs the most help here because if they lose to Buffalo, they would need Baltimore, Cleveland, or Indy to lose if they cannot get past the Bills. It's really tough here to see Miami make the playoffs, considering they have to beat the Bills in order to do it. Given that the Bills haven't locked in the number 2 spot yet, the Bills likely will play their starters. And Miami holds the tie over Baltimore, Cleveland, and Indy. Looking in the window here, Indianapolis is the lone AFC team not currently inside the playoff bracket that still has a shot to make it. Indy can win the AFC South with a win plus a Tennessee loss. Indy also can make the playoffs if they beat Jacksonville, plus one of the four teams that we just were talking about loses. So Indy really needs help. They've got to see a loss from either Miami or Baltimore or Cleveland or Tennessee. Plus, they've got to do the job against Jacksonville first in order to even get that shot. So Indy, looking at a rather tough road, unless Miami trips up. Jumping over to the NFC. The NFC is a little less cut and dry. 3 of the 4 clinched teams can drop or climb in the seeding still. Green Bay currently holds the number 1 seed, but could slip with a loss to the Bears. It's simple for Green Bay. You win, and the road to the Super Bowl runs, for the NFC, runs through Lambeau Field. Lose, they'll likely be traveling for the NFC Championship game. New Orleans Saints, currently at number 2. They can lock the number 2 seed in with a win. They can possibly jump up to number 1 if Green Bay loses. If New Orleans loses, they could slip as low as number 3 if Seattle does win. At number 3 currently, Seattle has the most to gain in this scenario, in this weekend, and the absolute least to lose. They're a dangerous team this week. They cannot drop any lower. They cannot get below 3. A loss means absolutely nothing to them in seeding. But winning and having New Orleans or Green Bay lose could catapult them up to 2 or even number 1. Big week for the Seahawks. Seahawks could end up with home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Seahawks could end up with a first-round bye. Because I wouldn't call either Green Bay versus Chicago or New Orleans versus Carolina a lock game. Those are big division games. And Chicago can play Green Bay very well. They've proven it. And Carolina can play good football here and there. They've proven it. And it wouldn't doubt it one bit if they came out and just punched New Orleans square in the face. It could happen. Tampa Bay, currently sitting at number 5. They'll lock in the spot with a win. But if they lose and the Rams win, the Rams hold the tiebreaker. The worst that Tampa can drop to is number 6. They can only drop one spot. The NFC win and in teams. We're going to start off with the only division left open, the NFC East. Washington, can't really say much else other than win, and you win the East. Lose, bye-bye. You go home. If Washington loses this game, they're out. This is playoff football for them right now. They cannot afford to lose. Like I said, they lose to Philly, game over. Either the Cowboys or the Giants win, and they go on to the playoffs. The Rams currently the number 6 seed. They're at 9-6. They could be bumped from the playoffs with a loss, but could still manage to make it if Chicago loses as well. So Chicago losing to Green Bay could mean the Rams don't have to beat the Cardinals. Rams are still in the playoffs then. Moving on down to Chicago, number 7. They're playing the Packers, 8-7. Now they do hold the tie over Arizona, but Chicago, I believe, has the toughest road here. They've got to beat Green Bay or hope that Arizona loses. Because if Arizona wins, Arizona will end up over the Bears. Arizona's currently on the outside looking in, but they're a win and in situation. Because if Arizona beats Los Angeles, Arizona's got a playoff spot. The Cards are the only team on this list that control their own destiny as far as making the playoffs. There's no loss scenario for them. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. They're the only team looking in that control 100% of their destiny. If they lose, just like Washington, if the Cardinals lose this game, that was their playoffs. They're done. Night. And that is true. Thank you very much, Jeebus, for bringing that up. Doesn't look like Kyler's going to be playing for the Cardinals, and it doesn't look like Goff's going to be playing for the Rams. We could see 2 backup quarterbacks that none of us have ever heard of before, that have never taken an NFL snap before in a game, going head-to-head, fighting for playoff lives. How crazy is that? Could you imagine Arizona bumps off the Rams or vice versa with a backup quarterback? Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And the teams needing help. Dallas and New York. The Cowboys and the Giants. The NFC East at its finest. The only way this game means anything at all is if Washington loses to Philly. If Washington wins, this game is pointless. It's bragging rights. It's kicking each other in the nuts at that point. If Washington loses, this game becomes the NFC East championship game. How ridiculous is it that this comes down to week 17, 3 teams with losing records, and the winner gets a playoff spot and the NFC championship. If Washington wins, they're in. If Washington loses, the winner of this game is in. Craziness. Absolutely craziness right there.